I threw a necktie in a public trash can once. Nobody saw me do it. No crowd, no moment, no one to witness it. I just dropped it in there right on top of somebody's old coffee cup and a folded newspaper, and I kept walking. That's how the whole thing started. I'm 82 now. I rent a trailer, metal, old, parked out behind a diner in the desert. The kind of place where the heat in August will do something strange to your thinking if you stay outside too long. My total net worth right now, and I'm genuinely not being dramatic about this, is probably the loose change sitting in my truck's ashtray and a $20 bill I keep forgetting is stuffed in my jacket pocket. I've never owned property, never had a retirement account, never been anybody's boss, never managed a single person, never had a title on a door. By every measurement this society uses to decide whether a man's life was worth living, I am what they would call a failure. And I am, without any question at all, the happiest man I know. You look at me and you probably feel a little sorry. That's all right, most people do. They see the trailer, they see the desert, they do the math in their head and they think, well, something must have gone wrong somewhere along the way. Nothing went wrong. I did this on purpose. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, sure, okay, but you probably didn't have much of a choice. You probably couldn't cut it. You probably weren't the kind of man who had real options. Let me take you back. 1961. I was 22 years old, full scholarship to one of those law schools where they carve the name in the stone above the door. You'd know the name. Doesn't matter now. First day. Orientation. They walked us into this enormous room, high ceilings, heavy wooden chairs, the kind of building designed to make you feel small and serious at the same time. And I looked around at the other young men in the room, sharp suits, good shoes, and their eyes looked like men who had already lost something. They weren't afraid of the work. The work hadn't started yet. They were afraid of not being first, afraid of what their fathers were going to say if they didn't make partner by 30. The race hadn't even begun, and they were already worn out from running it. You could see it, the way a man looks when he's carrying something heavy and he hadn't put it down so long he doesn't remember what it felt like to not be carrying it. I sat in that wooden chair. I want to tell you, I sat there a long time, thinking it all through carefully, working out the philosophy of the thing. That's not what happened. I sat there maybe 15 minutes, maybe less, and the only thought I had, it wasn't grand, it wasn't a revelation, it was just I'm going to spend every Tuesday of my life doing something I don't want to do. That was it. That was the whole thing. Tuesday, singular. I stood up, walked out through the heavy wooden doors, threw the tie in the trash can on the sidewalk outside, hitched a ride to California. My parents didn't speak to me for close to 10 years after that. My mother would tell people I'd had some kind of breakdown, which I suppose is one way to look at it. My father, he never fully understood it. Even later, when things had softened between us and we could sit in a room together without it being strange, he never quite got it. He'd look at me sometimes with this expression, not angry anymore, just baffled, like I was a math problem that kept coming out wrong. He was a practical man, worked the same job for 31 years, same building, same desk, retired with a pension and a watch. He was proud of that watch. I didn't think less of him for it. I want to be clear about that. He made his choice, and I made mine, and his choice worked out fine for him. We just wanted different things. The years after that, I did a lot of things that don't look like much on paper. Bartended for a while in a town by the ocean, flipped burgers at a couple of diners, played a little music on street corners in places where people might throw you $1 if they felt generous. Mostly they didn't. Picked up work where I could find it. Moved when I felt like moving. Stayed when I didn't. I made enough money for dinner and a beer, and sometimes enough to put a little aside. Not much, but enough. And every morning when I woke up, the day belonged to me, not to anyone else, not to a company, not to a boss, not to a mortgage on a house I'd be paying off for 30 years. Mine. All of it mine. Every hour of every Tuesday. There was a young man I spoke to for a few minutes on that first day before orientation started. We ended up standing next to each other in the hallway. Sharp dresser. Already knew exactly where he was going. I don't remember much of what we said. Something polite. He seemed like someone who knew how to talk to people he'd just met. He stayed. Went all the way through. Became exactly what he'd planned to become. Corporate law, I heard later. Made a lot of money. Had all the things you're supposed to have when you make a lot of money. He died in his office at 52. Heart. His kids were at the funeral. I heard about it through someone who knew someone years later. His kids were there, standing in a row, and he'd worked something like 80 hours a week for 30 years, and his kids were at that funeral, and I don't know. I didn't know him well. I've thought about him over the years more than you'd expect, given that I only spoke to the man for maybe 10 minutes. But I've thought about him. I think about the version of me that stayed in that chair, whether he'd have made it to 52 or whether he'd have made it past, whether he'd have had anybody at the funeral who actually missed him, whether he'd have spent 30 years carrying something that eventually got too heavy. I don't think about it with sadness exactly, more like the way you notice a road you didn't take. You're not sorry. You're just aware it was there. People ask me, and they do ask, especially younger people, they say, don't you wish you'd built something? Don't you wish you had something to show for it, something to leave behind? And I say, I'm still here. I haven't left yet. What I have is this. I have spent 60 years reading books outside. I have had long conversations with strangers in diners at odd hours. I have watched rain come in over flat land without once feeling guilty that I wasn't doing something more productive. I have gone to sleep without dreading the morning. I have not once in 60 years felt that tight thing in the chest on a Sunday night. You know the thing I mean. That particular kind of dread that isn't quite fear and isn't quite sadness. That closing in feeling at the end of a weekend when you know what Monday is. I don't know that feeling. I've never known it. I think that counts for something. Now I look at the younger people, and I do look. I'm not blind, and I see the same thing I saw in those boys in the wooden chairs. Except now it's worse, because at least those boys only had to worry about what their fathers thought, what their neighbors thought. You've got something in your pocket now that tells you what 8 billion strangers think about how you're living. You got people your age on little screens telling you to wake up at 4 in the morning and sit in cold water and track how long you slept and build yourself into something that can be sold. A personal brand, they call it. You are not a brand. You are a person. You are a messy, tired, distracted, ordinary person, and that is not a problem to be fixed. That is just what being a person is. You're running as fast as you can on something that doesn't move, and you're scared of what happens if you stop. I'll tell you what happens. Nothing bad. I'm not saying do what I did. I hitched a ride with $4 and a change of clothes and it worked out. But I'm not going to pretend that wasn't partly luck. Different person, different circumstances, different outcome. I know that. What I'm saying is simpler than that. I'm saying think about your Tuesdays. Just that. Your Tuesdays. The ordinary ones. The ones nobody's watching. If your Tuesdays are okay, you might be all right. If your Tuesdays make your chest feel like something is sitting on it, that's between you and yourself. But it's worth thinking about. It's worth sitting with for a minute, at least. I'm still renting, 82 years old, and I have never bought a single thing with a roof on it. I've had moments over the years where I had enough money that I could have, not a lot of money, but enough to put something down, and I never did. I've thought about that, why that is, and I don't have a clean answer. Maybe it's just that I like knowing I can hook the truck up and go somewhere else if I feel like it. Maybe it's that simple. Or maybe it's something about the weight of a thing you own. How once you own something, it starts to own you back a little. The cleaning, the insuring, the worrying about the roof at 2 in the morning. You think you bought a house. Mostly what you bought is a new set of things to worry about. I don't know. I don't have a house. I have a truck and a trailer and a very manageable number of things to worry about. Failure is just a word they use for people they can't get a hold of. That's all it is. When you don't care about the promotion, nobody can threaten you with a promotion. When you don't need the corner office has no power over you. When you have nothing to protect, there's nothing they can take. I'm sitting in a rusted trailer in the desert, and I am giving you the only thing I actually have to give, which is permission to stop, to put it down, to take a breath that isn't trying to get somewhere. If you want to leave the job that makes your chest hurt every Sunday, leave it. If you want to move somewhere smaller and slower and paint things on the weekends, or play music, or just sit somewhere and watch the light change, do it. They will call you a failure. They will whisper. Let them. Let them have the blood pressure and the meetings in the corner office with the Italian leather chair. Let them win. You take the Tuesday. There's a bird that sits on the wire outside my window most afternoons. Brown. Small. I've looked it up a couple of times and I still can't figure out what kind it is. Doesn't do much of anything. Just sits there. I've been watching it for about 20 minutes now. That's about where I am.